Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Chitheads. My guest today is Steve Peterson. Steve Peterson started Taoist Alchemy and Qigong on the recommendation of his family doctor. The practices both had a dramatic effect on his health and set him on a new spiritual path. He now teaches it to anyone and everyone who wants to learn. In his day job, he manages software projects, and he lives in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, with his wife and family. Hi, Steve. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, Jacob. Great to be here.
So in that short bio that I just read, it mentions that these practices that we're going to talk about a lot today and the philosophy around them really had a profound impact on your life. So I'd love to just start out maybe with you taking us on that journey, telling the story of how you encountered these practices and how they have helped you.
Yeah, well, this is a story I tell a lot to students, but it started basically when I couldn't sleep. That's how it started. I couldn't sleep. I was like insomniac. I was like, after like 3 or 4 weeks, I was almost insane. And so my family doctor was kind of in the Rudolf Steiner school, which is kind of a holistic school, and he hooked me up with a guy who was a Buddhist monk, actually, but who had trained a lot with Mantak Chia, who is a teacher who taught a number of Taoist practices, and one of these was the microcosmic orbit, which is a kind of meditation. And so I went to this guy, and it was like I started doing this meditation, and like bam, it was like instant change for me. I could instantly, it was like within a few days, I was completely able to sleep, and it was like wow. So that's what started me on this. But so it was and a lot of people who start on it have a specific crisis or specific need that they're trying to address, I find. But what kept me with it was that over the course of the, and I kept with this basically because I had to, because if I didn't do it, then I wouldn't be able to sleep anymore. So it was like I had a carrot and a stick. But as I kept practicing, I noticed, now you might not be, I'm a little older than you perhaps, but when you pass 40, you will notice that every month or every year, some new insult to your health emerges, whether it's a new twinge in a knee, a new allergy, a little less energy, any of a number of things. And so what I noticed is that process basically reversed. And I felt, every month something going away that I had accumulated that I didn't really want. Wow. So just from a health perspective, it was like an amazing change for me.
So do you think when you're mentioning that those processes started to reverse, are you saying that are they to a certain extent some of those processes of aging that a lot of people consider to be sort of inevitable are not necessarily inevitable with the right practices? Is that sort of what you're implying?
Well, from my perspective, yes. Yeah. I mean, in the Taoist tradition, they say maybe 100 or 120 years that we're given. So we will all eventually die. Yeah. So there's not like it's not a complete it's not a complete cure for life, but for death. But but we fritter it a lot away. So most people, don't live that long, and part of the explanation is that we waste our life force on a lot of resistance to a lot of things that we don't need to, or fighting. We're swimming upstream in cases that doesn't really serve our purpose. So and we're sort of at war with ourselves, which over time, basically, that takes a lot of your energy out of you.
Yeah. So basically, these sort of not so inevitable processes of aging, or at least ones that might be, moderated in a certain sense by these practices, it's the result of kind of an energetic drain that's happening from our habits? Is that the idea? And that the Taoist practices that you found are kind of concentrating or honing those energies in a more productive or life affirming way?
Yes. And there's many specifics, but yes, in a nutshell, that's true. There's several causes of poor health, okay? And these are all, I come at it from the perspective of health because that's kind of a common language everybody can talk.
Of course.
But there really is a spiritual, it really goes hand in hand with your own sort of emotional grounding inside and your own spiritual path. But for purposes of your question, I'm just going to stick with the health side of it. But like, for example, kinds of habits that make you a spendthrift in terms of your energy.
I like that word, spendthrift of energy.
Yeah. Well, okay, is poor eating habits, sleeping habits. And these are things that I'm sure yoga people are well aware of. In fact, they've really perfected this and really articulated many of these things well. So there's habits like that, which are and bad sexual practices, I guess you could put it, that waste energy. Right. So there's that whole sort of just general practices of how you live your life, just what you physically do. But sort of in a more internal way, your emotions are people. I don't want to say they're buffeted by their emotions, and one of the first things that you learn, or one of the first formulas or practices, is called emotional alchemy, where you're learning to basically find your ground and find your earth that is a balance of a lot of these different voices that you have inside that are sort of have different needs. And so I guess that's a kind of rambling explanation, but I guess the effect, the way it manifests itself is you might be out in the world and talking with somebody or in a situation, and somebody triggers you for some reason, and whether it's you get angry and you don't really know why, or maybe you've sort of adopted a posture of constant anger, basically, that you've sort of have adopted as you. Yeah. You've said, okay, you sort of identify with this emotion, and it could be anger, it could be sadness, it could be a lot of these negative emotions that it could be fear. So you adopt these postures, and you identify with them too much. And so that what happens is it's the equivalent of leaving the garden hose on and then going on vacation. You forget that it's on, and it's constantly running up your water bill. But over the course of time, you're paying more and more money and you don't even know where it's going. Yeah. And in reality, a lot of your energy is being used to feed these emotions sort of on a chronic level. And so where you want to get to is that, recognizing the emotions and feel them fully, of course, but you want to get to a place where you're not necessarily, they aren't you. Yeah. Yeah. They're more Yeah.
Yeah, I love this, the use of the term posture that you're using, because I actually, as a yoga teacher in my classes, I often use that term because it's relevant to, the fact that we assume postures of the body in asana practice. And then there's also this, a posture of the mind. And of course, in an asana class, often we're trying to, assume the posture of the breath in a certain sense, or something that allows us to see that where we're kind of existing in our own emotional space is a kind of, as you say, adopting of a posture. And I think most people don't recognize that where they're at emotionally, mentally is something that's modifiable or alterable. And so these practices is what I love about them. And this is where I'm seeing a connection here between what you're talking about with these practices and yogic practices, is that there is, it's offering the vision of a kind of flexibility of mind and heart that allows you to see the kind of the changeable nature of the postures of your own mind, so you can move in maybe we might say, I don't know, liberating directions or health inducing directions.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now I want to I love this idea you mentioned about a Taoist alchemy, and I know you've mentioned this. So is there anything else you can say about that? How does the alchemy, if we're to say, okay, there's a Taoist philosophy and then there's Taoist alchemy. Is a Taoist alchemy just kind of the practice of the philosophy, or is there something else there?
Well, alchemy, as I know it, is a very specific practice, and it's a kind of meditation. And so what I've experienced in my very limited experience of yoga classes is that and I've gone to the hatha yoga classes with the postures and getting in touch with your breath, and all these things are very helpful in setting the stage. I think what Taoism and there's possibly practices in yoga that I've never been exposed to, but that give you sort of a more prescribed path, I guess, a formula, which is a type of meditation that can really help in getting you to this place where you find this freedom that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And so it's not, because it's one thing to say, try and realize that you have a freedom, that you're not your emotions, but it's hard to know, well, how do I get from here to there? You can say that, but a practice is more, well, how do I do that? Yeah. And so that's where this difference between, when we were talking before the program, we were talking a little bit about the difference between philosophy and practice. And so, you have kind of a dogma in Taoism, and I call it dogma slightly disparagingly, and I shouldn't, but I mean, it's sort of like these maxims and these statements and these that are, yes, they're all well and good, and they are sort of a result, in my mind, of living the practices. But you can't get there without the practice, or rather, I can't. Yeah, right. Let me just put it that way, because I need something more tangible. Yeah. So can you give us a couple of examples of those maxims that are without practice, or sort of that feel dogmatic? Well, just the statement that you have freedom, you are not your emotions. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's one that yoga and Taoism have in common. Yeah. In a way, saying that you are not your emotions is freeing slightly, but everybody is looking from the inside out, right? You're in your own space, and it's hard to know how to get to this place where you separate yourself a little bit from your emotions.
Yeah.
So, a practice that helps with that is, for example, called fusion. And it is emotional alchemy. It's basically where you're setting up a energetic dialogue inside between your different shen, what they're called in Chinese medicine, which are kind of body spirits. Mm-hmm. So you have shen that are associated with the heart, your heart shen, which is your love and your expansiveness. And you set that up in dialogue with your kidney shen, which is more your batteries of your body and your sexuality and your will to survive, for example. So setting up this, I'm calling it an energetic dialogue. It's not quite. I mean, it's not quite. I guess that's sort of a high level view of what it is, and you've got 5 shen in your body. So the idea is to balance these out, allow them to freely exchange, and by that process, you liberate all this tied up energy that these shen have been consuming, basically for very good reasons, or maybe once were very good reasons. For example, if you're a child, and you suffer a humiliation that probably was nothing more than being scolded or being injured in a slight way, but your shen learn at that point a pattern that to avoid this. And your shen are just, they're trying to help you navigate this world. And so your shen are learning all these things. And some of them are like children still. Some of them are grown. Some of them are like children. So the idea is you want to treat your shen as children. And so how do you let your children grow? Well, you give them support, you give them attention, you let them play. And so in that process, your shen grow, they support each other, so you become more an integrated family, if we want to carry the metaphor further.
Yeah, why not?
And and so in the end, you have kind of a more unified common cause with all your aspects of yourself.
Yeah, I like that. It reminds me, I actually was going to ask you about the Shen, so I'm glad you brought it up. It reminds me a little bit about the chakras within the yoga tradition. But what I like, and I'm curious, you had mentioned before that, there are many voices inside. And were you sort of partly referring to these, because you referred to them as body spirits, so I immediately thought, okay, these are, spirits, so they have different voices. Is that kind of the idea that that the Shen have almost a personality of their own that, based on our own development, can be integrated or complementary to one another, or they can be in conflict? Is that sort of a bit of the gist of it?
Yes, very much so. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
So that's very interesting, and I want to ask you now something that you brought up, sort of, I think, just in passing, but I thought it was a really important thing to explore, which is you had mentioned spirituality and health and the connection between them, and I would love to kind of get your thoughts on this because, this is, I guess, the overall. If we could say, if we could be really general and say Eastern philosophy one of its main insights is that there is no separation between spirituality and health in a certain fundamental way, and yet in our culture, in our mainstream American or Western culture, there's a kind of disconnect between these two, and generally they are not thought to be connected. In fact, they're very much, at least in the mainstream domain, they're completely separated. So, do you have any thoughts on this, and sort of what you see as maybe being a problematic approach to health based on this insight from Taoism and other traditions?
Well, clearly, I share a lot of what you're saying, that spirituality is very much connected to health, and that clearly modern medicine is falling way short. They're sort of looking at it from the point of view of mechanics, and so they're missing out on a lot of things. I think it's on us as the experiencers of our health and our lives to fill in the gaps where we need to.
Yeah.
So, you can't necessarily go, even if the doctors were schooled in this, in Eastern philosophy and these sort of integrative practices. I mean, it still is on the individual to adopt them, to make them happen.
Yeah.
So, but my experience, with the where they come together is that I can say that I feel, for example, in doing some of these practices, for the first time, I felt that this idea of the life force that's coming in me, mm-hmm. and keep giving me life is its own kind of intelligence, and it's not necessarily mine. And it feels like a gift.
Yeah.
And so I can't necessarily explain. It was in the course of many of these practices that I came to feel that more and more. But it created a profound change in how I looked at myself and the world and sort of where my place was.
Yeah.
Because it was less about me, and still, I've been given this life, and I've been given these kinds of strengths and weaknesses and whatnot, but it's not all about me. It's sort of, I've been given this partly to serve the whole. Mm-hmm. And that shift was a big thing for me. And I don't think I could talk you through, because I think everybody is clouded in that vision by different obstacles. And so everybody needs to remove different clouds from the vision, needs to resolve different emotional conflicts to see and feel more clearly.
Yeah.
But I can say that one thing I love about the Taoist path is that it seems to work for it's kind of a general spiritual technology,
yeah.
if you want to say, that seems to work no matter what your tradition is. I mean, I grew up Christian, in a Christian, I wouldn't say like, I grew up in a United Church, which is a pretty progressive church.
Yeah, that's pretty progressive.
But there's many people in these practices that are Buddhist, that are, yoga is their practice. There's atheists or agnostics. There's, so it works. It helps you because it helps you from wherever you are starting from. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's what I mean by general purpose spiritual technology.
Yeah, no, I I like that term, spiritual technology, and what I like about it is that, you know, because I think there's a misunderstanding in a lot of these traditions that it requires some kind of faith or belief system, and you know, some people would consider Taoism a religion, and yet, you know, there is no, at least from my understanding, there is nothing that looks like God in a kind of traditional sense. So it's how are we calling it a religion? But it's, you know, it doesn't require belief in the sense that, you know, if you just have the discipline to engage in the practices and you it's almost like a form of experimentation. If you have the discipline to make the choice to practice these practices for a given period of time, you will see the results, and that will then, you know, I don't know, what would the word, clear out the kind of skepticism that you might initially have. But that's not necessarily an operation of belief. It's an operation of, okay, I'm working with this hypothesis, and now I'm going to experiment to see if the hypothesis is true for me.
Well, that's you could look at it that way. That's certainly if you start out with kind of from a show me perspective, mm-hmm. and you want to be rigorous, that seems like a good way to look at it. Yes.
That was very diplomatic of you. Okay. So now I have a couple of questions. Actually, one is a really sort of, I don't know, maybe it's a silly question, but I just want to know if there's any significance in the decision to spell it with a D or a T, Taoism. What's the difference, and why the difference? Is there a difference? No difference. It's okay. It's more just translating Chinese characters to English. There's different sort of systems. Just like you could spell Qigong with Qigong or Chikung. Yeah, I noticed that in your bio that you had chose the Kung. So are you a D or a T Taoist then? I've sort of moved to the T Taoist and the CHI spelling of Qigong because that's what most people recognize. I see. Yeah. So I'm just going with the flow there. That's great. So we've been talking a lot about the practices, and that's great. And I think a lot of people are going to be, for those that haven't heard of these practices before, hopefully be really inspired by the work that you're doing. But I want to ask a question, just sort of a general question about the connection between these practices and what I might read in the Tao Te Ching on Tao, on the Tao. So I'd love to ask you the question, just what is the Tao from the philosophical perspective, and then how are we to understand the relationship between these practices and that kind of, I don't know, metaphysical principle? Well, for me, what Taoism's, and this might be of interest to yoga practitioners, because in some ways yoga and Taoism are similar, but there is some very fundamental differences that partly is just cultural from where they came from, China versus India, and partly it's and maybe it's sort of is part of the philosophy. But in my experience, things like Buddhism, practices like Buddhism or philosophies, Buddhism, Christianity, most of the Western philosophies, and I would put yoga in this category, although I will not stand firm on that because I'm not a experienced practitioner, but tend to be what I might call fire practices or sky practices. There's sort of this idea that you want to transcend. Yeah. And so that in Christianity, it's all about the afterlife. Yeah.
getting to heaven, and you see this in a lot of practices and indeed, the elements in Western alchemy, earth, air, fire, water, and ether, ether is the central element.
Yeah.
And so, which is kind of a sky, an etheric idea.
Yeah.
Whereas in Taoist practices, the central element, this is the central Shen, is earth. So in other words, so how that translates is, it's sort of like, whether you're looking at tunnel that you're digging from one side or another. In Taoism, you're starting from where you are and your own earth, your own body, and you're expanding out from there. Whereas from a lot of the sort of the sky religions, sky philosophies, you're really sort of starting from an ideal and trying to reach yourself from there. And so my experience, at least for me, now I know that there's some people that's perfect for them. For me, I had so much resistance in my own body, I guess, to something imposed, seeing some ideal imposed from the outside, that was like, that was the wrong end of the tunnel to start for me. I needed to start from myself and feel like it was a natural extension of my existence. So that's what colors my view of what Taoism is that it's much more based on a natural, almost, it's got more in common with American Indian philosophy than sort of than anything else that I've seen. So does that address?
and then the notion of the Tao as the way or the path, and the kind of really beautiful poetry that we see in the Tao Te Ching about aligning with this way is really about kind of, from what you're saying and how I'm connecting this in my own mind, is that in order to do that, we have to go within in a kind of immanent sense. So we have to sort of ground ourselves with the earth element in order to begin to align with that great way, or the Tao. And is that sort of is that a good way to put it, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, that's good. I think it's like, well, I would say that there's people that have different kinds of skills that they're given. And so a fire method can work great for them. So I don't know that it's not like a one size fits all.
Sure.
But I think the idea of the way and the path is very much about finding this balance point between what the change that's going on in the earth, in the world around you, and your own virtues and your own needs. And so the way is finding that balance point between the two. So you're not ignorant of what's going on around you, because then you're just going to be basically swimming upstream. Or you might find yourself doing that. And you don't want to be completely focused outward, because then you're denying what you bring to the table as well. So for me, the path, this means finding that balance point.
Yeah, I like the way you put it that way. When I was reading something last night, and it was And the way it described the way was kind of like getting out of it. It almost seemed like it was sort of prescribing getting out of its way, in the, like, you don't, like, Wu Wei is, to this idea of Wu Wei that I was reading about, is that it's really the no action in the sense that you're not ignorantly, this is the way I would understand it, because I guess you could read it and be like, okay, so I'm just supposed to do nothing, or it's more like, no, you're not supposed to act ignorantly in opposition to something that is, at root a part of the kind of changing nature of what's happening. And so part of this practice is really aligning with what is in that kind of flow and flux of life, and working mindfully, or rather skillfully, with that. What, as you're saying, like the change that is happening within and the change that's happening without, and balancing those two.
Yes, beautifully said.
Okay,
beautifully
great.
said, I think.
Awesome.
And if you're reading, another key book that I found very helpful is the I Ching, which talks about change that's happening outside, and the different ways to respond, to foster change, to protect yourself, sort of. So it's sort of the relationship of the individual to the world, and the best way to deal with change. Yeah. And it's a great, I'd encourage you to take a look at that, to see the variety of strategies, and to think, well, do I have that strategy in me?
Yeah.
And when would that be called for? It's very helpful. Now, the I Ching is, sort of viewed as a way to tell your fortune, or to give advice, but I sort of see it as being kind of a guide to the many different ways of handling change.
I love that. I don't think I've ever heard anyone describe it that way. That's really great. Yeah, I think I haven't really picked it up, because I think in my, just in the past, I think it's been associated maybe with stuff that felt, I don't know, not illuminating. So I'm glad you couched it in those terms, because I think now I can go pick it up and with a more open mind. So thank you for that. I Ching. All right.
Yes.
So,
sure.
So now, I guess, my first question would be, I want to ask you actually to, maybe, if you're open to it, take us on a short practice. I really liked the idea of the inner smile. So I thought maybe you would be open to leading us through a short inner smile practice. But before that, I was wondering, is there anything else, based on what we've talked about, or maybe what we haven't talked about, in terms of the practices of Taoism, or how they connect to, our daily life, that you maybe want to share or discuss?
No, I think, I would love to take the listeners, us too, and whoever's listening in on an inner smile meditation. It's there is a saying that talk does not cook the rice. And so, you can talk about it for so long, but you need to do it.
Yeah, let's cook the rice.
Right. Right. So, but, the inner smile is actually a foundational practice, in that it's part of every single other practice you do. Mm-hmm. So, remember I spoke earlier about how when you want your kids to grow, to be healthy, you give them love, you give them support, and partly you just let them be what they are. The inner smile is a way to sort of do this with yourself and expand it to the world around you. Mm-hmm. So what you're doing, the effect of doing the inner smile, is that you're opening doors inside that might have been closed. You're activating and affirming different aspects of yourself that might have been shut down in the past. Mm-hmm. And for better or worse, you got to sort of go with where it takes you. So it's a relatively simple practice, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually sit down here and sort of the way I usually lead a class in it is just to do it with everybody and just talk people through it. So the way you might start is doing a little bit of shaking or sort of warming up the body a little bit. And I know most of the yoga classes I've been to start with a whole set of sun salutations, which is a great warm up, but something that sort of warms up your body and gets you in touch with your sort of whole physical self. And then after you do that, let's say we've done that, just in the interest of time. Mm-hmm. Then you sort of sit down and close your eyes and sit. You can sit, lean back. You can do this laying in bed. I like to do it sort of sitting up with my spine engaged, but just sitting on my sits bones and on the edge of a chair. And close your eyes. And first of all, just what is a smile? How do you direct a smile inside? Well, just walk with me with this and just remember that the best way to start a smile is actually to put one on your face. Even if you don't feel like smiling, even if you have like an inner frown going, that's okay. If you put a smile, literally, even if it involves putting a pencil in your mouth so that it forces your corners of your lips up, to put a smile on your face, it really starts the process. So the very first thing is to do that. And then, so if everybody's got a smile on their face, then the next thing is you want to sort of kindle this smile inside. And the best way I've found to do that is you can imagine either a mirror right in front of your eyes or a close friend or somebody that you really trust. And just, so it can be yourself as well via a mirror, and just see and smile at yourself. See them smiling at you. And it's just a general, supportive, warm smile. And feel that. If you're looking in the mirror in front of yourself and you're feeling that, just feel that support bounce back and accumulate in your eyeballs. So your eyes, you might just sort of feel that your eyes have this sense of warmth, that your eyes are smiling at themselves and you're supporting them, and you can feel a slight warmth. And this can take a while, or for some people, it can take no time at all. But what you're doing is you want to take that little fire, little warmth that you started, and invite the rest of you slowly to join it. So if you're smiling at yourself in your eyes and you feel a little bit of warmth, then allow your eyes to smile at each other. So your two eyes are smiling at each other. They are, and by smiling, you're supporting, you're saying, man, we're pretty good. We're doing a good job. We're working hard. We can see light. How cool is that? There is a lot. It's basically just appreciation and appreciating the virtues of your eyes. And from there, your eyes are only going to feel better about themselves after this. And they will answer by feeling warm. When they start to feel warm or even light, a sensation of light, you know that your eyes are smiling with you. And from there, you can expand. You can say, well, now let me smile at the left side of my brain, for example. So you're smiling at that whole space. It might feel like a big space in your head, but you're smiling at that space and at the brain matter that's there, the kinds of thoughts that are there. And you're inviting that part of your physical body and your inner space to join you in this smile. So you're appreciating it and inviting it to join in this kind of unifying smile. And what you will feel at some point is that the left side of your brain kind of becomes a little lighter. The lights seem to come on, or it warms up, feels like there's a little glow there. And it's doing that because it feels connection and appreciation and unity. So what we do over the course of an inner smile meditation is we're going to basically go expand to different parts of your body. And so let's go to the right side and just direct your appreciation of the part of you and the part of you that's already glowing a little bit to the right side of your brain, of your head, and that inner space. And appreciating the aspects of yourself there, appreciating what it does, what kinds of thoughts you can have on that side. So, an inner smile meditation you can do it for 15 minutes, you can do it for an hour, and you sort of follow it as long as you want. So I'm going to just take us I'm guessing that we probably have maybe 5 more minutes. So I'm just going to take us on a meditation that will last about that long. And of course, I'm just guessing because I got my eyes closed and I'm smiling. So, but let's let the smile on either side of your head just, you're inviting your right side of your head now to join in this smile. So it's both an appreciation and an invitation. It's just like if you saw somebody at your house at a party and you were in a party and you saw somebody outside the house looking in. First, you might recognize them, and second, you would invite them in, and it's up to them to take that step. But so that's a gentle kind of approach to yourself that works just as well. And so traveling down, let's say our head feels warm and like there's a little gentle celebration going on inside. Now this smile can extend down to your neck, sort of all the way to the base of your neck. Feel where your vocal cords are and where the top of your neck or the bottom of your neck is. Just appreciate, think of what your neck and that whole space is about. It's about speaking. And it also serves as a separation sometimes to our detriment between our body and our mind, or in our head, our brain. So smile at that space, at the fact that it is a connection between it connects your brain and your body. And it's a place where you speak your truth from. And so take a moment to appreciate that space, appreciate the words that you say. And we all say things sometimes that we think, oh, that was stupid. That's okay. Appreciate that we all make mistakes and we don't always say the right thing. But appreciating the fact that we said something and that we are basically trying. So the smile continues. Invite your neck, your throat to join in the smile as well. So it's joining the party. And I'm going to take us down one more layer because I'm not sure of the time. But let's take a moment to all let the smile extend down to your heart. So your heart should be your best friend. So think about all the things your heart does for you. It's beating blood around your body, keeping you alive. It does it without you having to say, okay, say to beat. I mean, just that feat in and of itself, this tireless support is amazing and worthy of appreciation. And then think about how your heart keeps you warm, the love you feel there, how important a part of your life that is. You can appreciate the dark feelings that might be there as well. The heart has many, many dark feelings, that hatred, bitterness, irritability, lots of things there that we don't like to associate with ourselves, but we need to recognize that they're all part of the party and invite them all, and invite them to smile with us. So,
thank you, Stephen. That was really excellent.
Okay.
That was really beautiful. Thank you. I hope I didn't cut you off too short. You seemed like we were at a closing point there, but thank you. That was really nice. So now, just to close, I wanted to ask you if you wanted to share anything about any upcoming workshops that you're doing, or where people can find you if they want to come to any of these practices in your area.
Well, I teach regularly at my house, and it's sort of a donation-based. Every week I have people coming in, and we sort of learn whatever the people there are ready to learn. So that's not quite that wouldn't probably work for people that are traveling any distance.
Yeah.
But there are some great workshops this summer that I would direct people to as possibilities. Mantak Chia, who started this lineage, he sort of codified many of these practices into a teaching sequence. And you can Google Mantak Chia, M-A-N-T-A-K, Chia, C-H-I-A. And he's teaching all over the country, in the U.S., all over the world, really. But he teaches in the U.S. up in Massachusetts at Lenox.
Okay.
And this in June. I'm actually going up there to that. He's a fantastic teacher. And he's got several different workshops he's teaching over the course of 3 weeks. So I would say that is one great resource. Another excellent resource is Michael Wynn, who teaches all summer long. He has a series of workshops for beginners, intermediate, and advanced people in all areas. And he teaches in the mountains in North Carolina near Asheville. And you could, if you Google Michael Wynn, you will quickly find those workshops. And I've gone to those every year since I've been doing this, and I've gone to one of Mantak Chia's workshops every year as well, and always learned something new there.
That's excellent.
So that would be a great place to start.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been really a pleasure talking with you, Steve, and I hope you have a fantastic day.
My pleasure. Yes.
Yeah, and I'll speak with you soon.
Yes, thanks so much for promoting this.
Absolutely.
Promoting all this. Yes.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Steve Peterson. If you'd like to learn more about Taoism and the practices that Steve and I talked about, you can go to universal-dao, that's Tao, universal-dao.com.